Start.
Hi, and welcome to the Cat and Parrot. Probably one that's a bit niche now, Anne-Marie. So A-levels and GCSEs. Many schools are filling out the lovely CAG, and if you don't know what a CAG is, then you're in a very happy place. You stay there. So CAGs. Normally, DSLs around exam time would only be contacted about maybe students that would have really severe panic attacks for exams, or maybe had some kind of special consideration that we would have to look at, but maybe they would need a separate room or be by a door or something along those lines. And that is as much involvement that a DSL would probably have around exam time. And that's mainly with examination officer. This year, it feels very different. And we're breaching onto the how much information we share. And this is what the advice I want from you, Anne-Marie, is.
All right.
It feels like we're with a CAG, a DSL is going to have to share a lot more information than perhaps they would feel comfortable with. Because on the CAG, part of the process at the end is that we have to say, has there been some significant issue that has maybe held a child back? And this could be a wide area. This could be social service involvement. This could be something that's happened during lockdown with parents that maybe means that they couldn't have got the chance to hand in a piece of work. Because of course with the CAG, when it's not just based on one day, they could be handing in a piece of work that was from January. Well, January is when they could have found out that mum and dad split up because of domestic abuse, and they could have witnessed some horrendous domestic abuse. So how much do you think that we as a DSL, how do we make sure that DSLs are trying to get the best for their pupils by sharing the right information, but then they're keeping everything confidential? Is that juggling act? How do you, as someone from the outside, how do you perceive our role?
Because of, obviously, don't forget Kixie spoke about the whole thing about children who have a social worker, so teachers needed to know, right? So we knew that that's because of them teachers understanding the circumstances compared to a child who hasn't got a social worker. But one could argue thresholds are high, and therefore there's more children that should have a social worker than not. But based on your comment about what should we share, one could argue again, in your training, so we know this time last year, we kind of predicted what was happening, the forecast, etc., but we were uncertain. So I'm aware that a lot of schools had brought in educational psychologists, blah, 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 to support the staff with understanding the impact of trauma, the impact of things on children. So with that in mind, I believe that if we've all had the training and understanding about, the impact of trauma, but also adverse childhood experiences, events, etc., then in you talking to a person in the impact of COVID and other things on top of that, from everyone's invited to obviously George Floyd, they would have experienced, compared to many, the year before, quite a lot, almost like a steep in how they're processing things, i.e. triggers, blah, blah, blah. So one could argue that, it's very hard for you in your situation to predict on children, how has that impacted on their learning? Because some children can block it and can't. So but one could argue they're year 11 students, one could argue, or your A-level students, and they're leaving the school or going to sixth form. So in the best interest of the child, and again, education is part of the assessment framework, I would, in a situation, not share it casually, willy-nilly in that sense. You're going to share something specific in a way that they understand that child's experiences. So we always say the lived experience of the child. So have something in that sense.
I think that this is something that many schools haven't quite I've only just this week, 2 weeks ago, realized how much I've got to do for the CAGs. I knew it was there, but I knew how much the mini test, but I didn't realize that I'd have to sit there and analyze each piece of work, and when that piece of work, what was going on with that child. And if you've got 100 kids in a 100 kids in a year group, that is quite hard. And also to quantify what, as you said, what could trigger one student might not trigger for another one. And say it was a loss, for example, a loss for some students, they'll be like, okay, that's sad, but I can get on with it. But then a loss in a different student, depending on who that person is, that could have a huge detriment to what's going on with them, especially if they were lived in situations, and COVID hasn't been friendly to a lot of students. And
I think the bereavement
thing,
thing is quite important, I think,
yeah,
because we know the impact that has on. I remember working with children whose parents were ill, and they were almost stagnant when the parent was ill, but as soon as they passed and they could process it,
yeah,
they then excelled in their learning. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean? So I
yeah,
think it's definitely, you know, for the research, it does have an impact on their education, definitely how they focus, concentrate,
yeah,
etc. We've
definitely.
got 30 seconds left, Kerry.
Gosh, okay, well, that's really helpful. It's good to know, but I'm hoping that other DSLs are not necessarily in the same position I am, but happy that we can maybe think about sharing it, being wise with how we're sharing it.
Okay, lovely.
Thank you.
Well, thank
Bye.
you. Thank you. Bye.